Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is from Moments by Liz. This is her new pattern. Liz is one of my favorite designers. I love her as a person. She's hilarious. She's a lot of fun. She's just got a great personality, and her patterns are very just common sense, beneficial, great patterns that serve a purpose. So I love using her patterns. I've sewed a couple already on this channel, and I hope to sew even more. So I was very thankful that she not only let me test, but agreed to let me do a video for the release. There's going to be another video out by another YouTuber. Whenever I get her link, I'll make sure I put it in the description so you can watch hers too to see which video helps you the best make this pattern. For today's tutorial, I'm using two different fabrics. I'm using a cotton woven from J&R Edwards, and I'm also using a cotton woven from the Emporium from Brittany. Whenever this video comes out, the cotton woven from J&R Edwards will be available for pre-order, but the cotton woven from the Emporium, that pre-order will have already closed, but you will possibly be able to get it at retail. She does order a small amount extra, so make sure you join her group to see if she has any available for retail or to just participate in the next pre-order. One other thing I want to note is that with this pattern, I am choosing to use this print as the lining. I am not interfacing it at all. I told Brittany that her cotton woven feels more like a cotton canvas. It's a really nice weight and has a great feel. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't interface it. I'm just saying I do not feel like it needs interfacing at all in this pattern, and so I'm not going to be doing that. So let's go through the pieces of this pattern. There's several pieces here, and there's going to be several things I'm going to do. I'm going to try to do all the options in this pattern, but just know that if you feel a little overwhelmed or you don't want to do as many as I'm doing, you can always just kind of cut some out. So let's talk about our gusset first. We're going to have two different zipper gussets or panels, whichever way you want to call it. And you can see there are two different sizes. One is skinnier than the other. One's going to be a front and one's going to be the back. The zipper will go in between. So for the linings, I don't have anything on those. For the exterior pieces, I do have them interfaced with a fusible foam. I know that I'm going to be binding this bag, so I did choose to keep the foam in the seam allowance just because I like the way it looks. You could always keep it out if you don't want to. The pattern even tells you that you could quilt these pieces if you want for a really unique look. I felt like where my print was so busy and colorful, I didn't want the quilting to actually distract from the print, so I left mine unquilted. So those are your two zipper panel pieces. We're going to have that bottom gusset piece at one interior, one exterior. Again, the same thing. No woven interfacing on this one, foam on the exterior piece. I have a handle here. I want to talk just a little bit about this handle. I typically would take a handle like this and I would just do a four-way fold, maybe fold under the raw ends if I felt like it needed it to be attached that way. This pattern has us do something different, so let's look at that before we go on to our next pattern pieces, just so we can talk about it. You're going to cut out, according to the pattern measurements, the width and length of this strap, but then you're going to fold it in a unique way. So the first thing you'll do is you'll fold it right sides together, just like this, matching up those long edges. But then you will fold these edges down so that they're wrong sides together. So the middle portion will be right sides together. The exteriors here on the sides will be wrong sides together. This is how we're going to sew it. We'll end up sewing these short edges and then turning this out, and that way those edges will be finished at the end instead of doing like I would do and folding them under. So typically I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to do it this way, but I'm challenging myself because I trust Liz as a designer that I'm going to follow her pattern and see what I think. So this is her handle, and it will be attached on the top to those zipper panels. Here is my snap tab. This is going to be the snap tab for the front pocket. On this piece, I did choose to interface the cotton woven on the exterior with a layer of interfacing. I use Royal Pixie Light. It's an equivalent to SF101, but we have two pieces there. One will be the exterior, and then one will be considered the interior. The pattern piece for this does have the placement for your snap. So go ahead and be deciding if you want to add a magnetic snap or a can snap, and go ahead and make the placement there so you can get that installed also. This pattern does have several pieces to it, so I did make little notes for myself so that I wouldn't get confused. This is your back zipper pocket. You can see that on the top piece, I rounded those corners. This pattern is a pattern that I love because it does not give me 500 pattern pieces. She gives us the cut measurements, and then she gives us a rounding template so that we just round the corners ourselves. This saves me time, and it lets me be a little more accurate, and also saves money with paper and ink. So this will be the back zipper pocket exterior piece. Nothing on it. I will add foam to this after I complete it, but right now it's just going to be by itself with no interfacing at all. My cotton woven, like I said though, is a heavier weight. If you have a thinner weight, you would definitely want to interface this first. Since I showed you that back top zipper pocket, I want to show you the back bottom zipper pocket. So this is what this piece will look like. I will not round these corners at the bottom. We only round the corners at the top, and so where this piece will be sewn to the zipper, I do not round anything on this piece. Again, like I said, nothing on the back of this one, just like with the top piece. When I was explaining all the pieces you need to make this pattern, originally I forgot to include the lining pieces for that back zip pocket, so I'm cutting this in just to make for sure you know that you do cut 2 pieces of that, and you do not need to interface these as they will be the lining for the zipper pocket. We're going to go now into those interior slip pockets. These are some of the pieces that could be optional if you didn't feel like cutting everything out, but this is your interior slip pocket number 1. I have an exterior piece and a lining piece. We have an interior slip pocket number 2, again, exterior and interior. We have a pleated pocket. So this is what this will look like, front and back, and I just realized I think I needed to cut out mesh and I didn't. I'll get that in a minute. I'm also going to have this slip pocket for the front. It has this really nice shape here. We do have a pattern piece for this. This will be what that snap tab attaches to, so you will have to add a magnet or cam snap on here. I did go ahead and add a layer of interfacing on this just so I have a little extra body onto this piece. This piece will be a piece after we get done that will attach. I'll go ahead and show you to your front like this. So I will say that the pattern tells you a really nice way to do the slip pocket. She wants you to cut out the lining as a contrast so you can fold it in a way so that you'll have that pop of color on this piece. That contrast, it'll look like a faux piping. Well, I did not read the pattern beforehand, and so I cut mine out the same color. I'm going to show you how you would do that if you do cut out yours as a contrast to show you that little pop, but I'll end up folding mine just a normal way because it wouldn't make any sense on mine to have this same color peeking through, but I will go over their steps. I just wanted to point it out so that you know if you wanted to use a contrast here, you would be able to see it and it would create a unique look to the bag. We are also going to have a back slip pocket. I have those pieces cut here. We have an exterior and a lining, and I did add a little bit of interfacing, the Royal Pixie Light to this piece, but nothing to the lining piece. And these are going to be my lining pieces. So we'll have 2 lining pieces, nothing added to them. If your cotton woven is not sturdy, definitely add something to those. And then I have the front piece. This is what the slip pocket will attach to. I also have already attached this to a fusible foam. I have not rounded the corners of this piece yet, but this piece has the foam attached. I have an additional piece of foam right here that I do not have anything attached to. I will add that back pocket after I complete it to this piece, and so we'll end up having a front and back exterior attached to foam. We have a couple of zipper tabs, and then we have a D-ring, or 2 D-rings I should say. I'm going to make mention that the D-rings are optional. This has a handle to carry, but if you're someone who wants a strap, then you'll add the D-rings. If you choose not to use a strap, you won't need these D-rings. So these are the pieces. Like I said, lots of pockets, lots of options. You do not have to do them all. I want to do this video to show all of them just so we can kind of see all the options this pattern has and just how it'll come together. I'm going to go ahead and get started off camera kind of putting everything together. I'm not going to be sewing anything, but just kind of getting things organized. And then we will come back and talk about everything and get started creating this wonderful bag. I cannot wait to see it done. I think it's going to be one of my favorites. First thing we're going to be working on is the front exterior slip pocket. I went ahead and added the magnetic snap. I'm using one with prongs, so I do have the prongs pushed to the outside on the back. This is going to be the exterior. This is going to be the lining. What we're going to do now is we're just going to place these two pieces right sides together. You're going to match up all the sides and edges, and we're just going to sew across that top curve with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Once you have a top stitch, you're going to fold these pieces wrong sides together. Now, if you remember, I was telling you that the pattern has a unique way of doing this. If you have a contrast for your lining, this is the way you'd want to do it. You would want to wrap this lining around that seam allowance. So instead of let's pull over the back, instead of folding it to where it's all the way down like this, you would leave that seam allowance up and kind of just gently wrap this around. I'm not going to do mine that way because mine's on a contrast, but if you can see, what you would do is you would create this overhang here of that accent all the way around. It'd be so pretty if I would have realized and cut mine as a contrast. You can see how you would top stitch and you just have that unique pop of color if you did yours that way. Since I didn't, I'm going to fold mine just the traditional way because it just wouldn't make any sense for me to do mine. So I'll just go ahead and fold mine the regular way, and then we are going to top stitch along that folded edge 1/8 of an inch away, just like you would typically top stitch. But definitely try the contrast and have that pop there. I think it'll be beautiful. Just as a side note, if you did it the way the pattern says, your lining would just be a little bit shorter than your exterior, so they wouldn't match up, and that is completely expected and what the pattern tells you to do. This is how my slip pocket looks. Off camera, I'm going to attach one of my tags here directly below that magnetic snap. The pattern does give you instructions to do one on the side, but I think I want mine right here, and I do want to go through both layers just for extra security, so I'll do that off camera. My next step though will be to pull out that snap tab. I went ahead and added the other side of the magnetic snap here. The pattern does give you a couple options for snaps. You can have one like mine. This is for cotton woven. It has the seam allowance included. There's also a raw edge like this shape that does not have the seam allowance, and so that one would be easier. You wouldn't have to turn because this will be a little tricky turning it through a long skinny spot. I think it'll be fine though. And then there's also a completely different shape with both a raw edge or a cotton woven option as well. I'm just going to clip these right sides together, start sewing at the top, make sure I backstitch, and go all the way around. I'm going to pay extra attention right here, going slow to make sure I do not get that magnetic snap in my seam allowance. I shouldn't, but I'll just be careful to make for sure I don't. Now that I have this sewn together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this right sides out, take it over to the iron and iron it flat, and then I will come back and top stitch. I'll also go ahead and add that tag while I'm off camera too. I went ahead and added the tag onto that front slip pocket, and I turned the snap tab right sides out and pressed it flat. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to top stitch around this snap tab, and then I'm also going to pull out the exterior. This is the exterior front piece, and I'm going to figure out which way I want it orientated, and then I'm just going to clip this on. Now, if you did your slip pocket the way the pattern says, you would have a little bit of overhang that you would need to trim off, so make sure you take care of that. For me, I don't, so I'm just going to clip mine this way. I'm going to baste around the slip pocket just to attach it to this front exterior piece. Now that I have the front slip pocket basted and the tab top stitched, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and snap that tab on there, I'm going to make sure I have it centered and going straight, and then I'm just going to baste across that to kind of attach it to this top piece. I'm going to pull out this handle piece. I'm kind of excited to see how it's going to work. I explained how I folded it in the beginning. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew across both of these short edges with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now that I have those short edges sewn, what I want to do is I want to kind of just push them out, and I might just do a little bit of angled cutting first just to kind of reduce some of that bulk around this area. So I am going to just push that, flip it down. And the designer says that the pattern, you know, this, since it was already creased, will kind of won't go the way you want it to, and you just kind of let it go that way. So I'm just going to push my fingers in there, pull that tight. And we do have a beautifully finished handle. I have to give her credit there. I was a little like, when I was cutting it and reading over it and folding, I was like, oh, why don't we just do it the regular way? Well, because this way looks beautiful. So now that I have this done, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch all around this handle to finish this off so it'll be ready to attach whenever we do the next steps. We're going to be working on that back zipper pocket. I realized when I was cutting up my zipper that I didn't talk about any of the hardware. We definitely need some zippers in this video, of course, so I apologize for that. But I went ahead and cut my zipper according to the pattern measurements. I am using a number 5. I do have my zipper pull attached. I pulled out that zipper pocket bottom for the exterior, the zipper pocket top, 2 zipper tabs, and a zipper. First thing I'll do is I'll take my zipper, and I'm only going to attach 1 zipper tab. The pattern tells us after we attach the first zipper tab that we're going to measure to see where we add the other zipper tab. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to sew this zipper tab on right sides together with the zipper tape with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and pull that zipper tab back and top stitch, and then I will go off camera to measure how far down we're going to place this other zipper tab. I made the mark on the zipper tape according to the pattern measurements. I'm going to lay my zipper tab right sides down on the zipper tape at that measurement. I will sew it on with the seam allowance in the pattern, then I will flip it back and top stitch just like we did the other side. So now what we're going to do is make just a traditional zipper sandwich with the back pieces and the zipper lining pocket pieces. You can do these steps one at a time, or if you wanted to, you can do them all at once. I'm going to do them all at once. I'm going to start with the top. And so what I'll do is I'll take that top piece, flip it down. So these are right sides together. You'll want to make for sure that you match up your centers. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way, so that everything is nice and even. And so we're just going to clip these 2 pieces together, and then we will come back and add the lining. If you wanted to, you can of course baste the zipper on first by itself. So this is what I have at this point. Here's the top, here's the zipper attached. I'm going to take out one of those lining pieces, and I'm just going to place it right sides down. So it's the wrong sides of the dipper, but it's right sides together with that top exterior. I'm going to clip, and you can again make marks on the centers to match up, or you can just clip with those short edges. Whatever the way you do it, just make sure that everything is lining up and everything's even. Now that we have everything clipped up, we're going to sew through all 3 layers with the seam allowance given in the pattern. At this point, what you're going to do is you're going to flip these pieces wrong sides together, and we're just going to top stitch like we typically would do right along that edge we just sewn. I do about 1/8 of an inch away. This is how the top looks. I'm going to complete those same steps to add the bottom. We'll put the bottom right sides together with that zipper tape, and then we'll come back, flip that over, and add the lining right sides together with the lining. We'll sew it with the seam allowance given in the pattern, and then we'll pull them apart and top stitch. When we top stitch this time, we'll definitely want to make for sure that we do not catch the lining or the top piece in that top stitching. So the lining from the top part, we want to make sure stays out of the way whenever we're top stitching along the bottom. So this is what it looks like, what we have right now. I'm going to just flip it open so you can see. Here are the two lining pieces right sides together. If we flip it over, here are the two exterior pieces right sides together. This is the way it'll look at the end. I'm going to sew across this edge, then pull those apart and top stitch, and when we come back, we'll go ahead and go on to the next step. So I have the top and the bottom pieces attached to the zipper. This is what it looks like from the front. This is what it looks like from the back. What we're going to do now is we are going to lift this up, let those linings fall the way they normally will fall. You will definitely have overhang. You will definitely have to trim this up. We are going to trim up this overhang, and then we are simply going to stitch just the bottom closed. After we do this, the sides will get attached in the next step. Once it's trimmed, go ahead and pull these two apart. Let's go ahead and sew with the seam allowance given in the pattern to close up the bottom. Now what we're going to do is pull out that piece of foam. I am not going to risk using my heat press on this step. I have done that before, and one time it messed up the zipper, it melted it slightly and made it extremely hard to open and close. So I won't make that mistake again. For this one, what I'll do is I will just baste around, even though that's not my preferred preference with how to attach foam. I like that really solid press on it, but this way is just the best option for this pattern. Plus, if we did that, it would probably make it for a tighter fit on the pocket. I have cut the foam to exactly the measurements given the pattern, so I know it's the right way. Fortunately, I don't really have too much overhang, maybe just a little bit on one side, but everything is fitting pretty good. If you have any overhang, go ahead and trim that down now. I'm going to baste all around the perimeter. After I get done, I will trim up any extra we have. And while I'm basting this in place, I'm going to use my hand to kind of make sure everything stays flat. To try to help get the best look at the end, I don't want any bunching or any like loose material there. So I'll be stitching and holding things down flat to kind of make sure everything looks its best in the end. I'm just going to go 1/8 of an inch around, making sure I'm pulling everything tight the whole time. I went ahead and basted that back onto the foam, so I have it ready, and now I pulled out those two back slip pockets. I'm going to take them and place them right sides together, and I'm going to just sew along that top edge. So I'll just sew along here with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After you have that sewn together, the pattern tells you can do that same thing that you did with the front if you did that contrast. I did do a different print this time, but it's the same print as that back, so it's not even going to matter any. I should have paid better attention, but it's okay. So I am just going to open mine up and fold my exterior over the seam allowance the normal way. If you were doing yours differently with that contrast, what you would do, if you remember, is you kind of hold that down and you just wrap the lining around, and I'll show you what that looks like just so you have clarity. And it has that kind of, the seam allowance is here at the top actually. So it just has that decorative border there. Since I did not do that, I'm just going to open up my seam and close mine the normal way. I'm going to top stitch all along this top edge about 1/8 of an inch away. After you top stitch along that back slip pocket, you are just going to attach it onto the back. You're going to line up the sides and the bottom and just baste all around this piece. I have my back exterior and my front exterior ready to go. I am going to, at this point, set these aside. The pattern does give us some measurements to make on these. Make the marks on these that the pattern suggests, and we'll go ahead and have those taken care of. I'm going to move on to the next steps though. And I'm going to pull out that zipper gusset 2 is what the pattern says. I'm calling it the back gusset or the back zipper panel. The pattern tells us to make a mark for the centers, and then they give us 2 measurements as to how far away from that center we're going to mark. You are also going to make measurements on your handle, and this is just going to help to make sure you place this the correct way. So what you will do is you will place the edge of your handle right there where the pattern marks tell you to do, and it'll have just a slight lift on it like this. The lines you draw on the handle is going to be where you're going to sew your box. So you'll sew your box across that line you make and then just continue around. So you will stitch on that line you draw and then just continue around to make a box. You can do a cross in the middle of the box or add a rivet, whatever your preference is. I'm going to go ahead and sew my handle on using those measurements given in the pattern. Now that you have your handle on, if you haven't already cut your zipper tape, go ahead and pull it out and make sure you cut it at least as long as the zipper panel is. I always go a little bit longer so I have a little bit of extra room there, and we'll start attaching and making the zipper gusset. Now at this point I'm just going to do a traditional zipper sandwich, and to make my gusset the exact way I always do, I'm going to take the zipper, place it right sides together with this zipper gusset 2, and then I'm going to add the lining directly on top of it, and I'm going to sew them together. After I get those sewed together, I'll separate them, put them wrong sides together, and then top stitch all along this panel. I'll do those same steps for the bottom zipper gusset piece or zipper gusset number 1. So this is the way mine will look at the end. It'll be just like this. So let's go ahead and do all those steps and get that done. And then you'll have to decide if you want to add the D-rings or not. And you'll definitely want to add your zipper pulls. Now that I have these zipper gusset number 2 and the zipper clipped together, I'm just going to sew it with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now that you have these sewn together, go ahead and flip them so that they're wrong sides together, and let's top stitch on that exterior piece all against the edge where we just sewed. Now that we have the first one attached, we're going to do the same thing to attach the second panel, and then we'll come back to attach the bottom. Once you have the zipper gusset panels attached, go ahead and trim up the zipper tape if you need to. Make sure you add your 2 or 1 zipper pulls on there. If you're going to do the D-rings, now's the time. I'm going to do D-rings, but I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. I'm just going to fold the D-ring on. I'm not top stitching anything. I'm just going to baste it right in place where that zipper tape is. So I'm going to baste it right on top of the zipper is what I'm going to do. Now that we have the D-rings attached, we're going to take out that bottom gusset piece and we're going to attach it the same way we typically would. We're going to do right sides together with that exterior, clip the short edges in place. Then we're going to take the lining piece and put it right sides together with the lining, clip that short side as well. If you feel uncomfortable, you can baste these one at a time. Where it's such a short distance, it's usually okay without too much slipping. I'm going to come over to this other side and do the same thing. We're going to sew both of these short edges with the seam allowance given the pattern. Pay attention to make sure that your hardware does not get under your needle. Once you have these short edges sewn, then what you're going to do is you're going to flip everything out to where it's wrong sides together, top stitch on that bottom gusset, and you can baste the long edges around. When I come back, we'll have everything done with this gusset. Oh, wait, before we sew this, the pattern does tell you marks to make on the bottom of your gusset. You will want to make those just so it's easier to do it now. If you don't want to, you can do it later. It would just be easier and less confusion to do it at this point before you sew. My gusset is completed. I'm going to set this aside and start working on the interior. We are making great progress. I have the gusset completely done, the front and the back exterior pieces. Go ahead off camera, make sure that you have all the marks on your exteriors and your gusset so that you can attach those a little bit later. I'm not going to do that just yet. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and grab out some of the lining pieces and start working on all those pockets. I did go ahead and cut the mesh for that mesh pocket. The pattern tells you how wide and long to cut it, and I also cut out a piece of ribbon. The pattern tells you can use fold over elastic, but I didn't have fold over elastic in the size needed, so I just use this ribbon instead. The pattern gives a great tip to use a glue stick to help this ribbon stay on the top while you sew it. I think that's a great idea. I love using glue sticks in the sewing room. I think they're just a quick and easy way to help you get your sewing done a little bit quicker and easier without as much mess as double-sided tape or regular glue. I'm just going to lay this kind of in the middle. I'm eyeballing it. Mine won't be perfect. And then I'm just going to push it down. A glue stick isn't like a permanent hold, so it's not going to be great to get everything in there. It's just going to help give it a little bit extra help so it's not shifting as much when you are sewing it. The mesh I'm using may look a little different than yours. I actually use window screen instead of mesh. It doesn't stretch and it is like a little stiffer, so it provides a little more support. You can buy this online or you can buy at your local hardware store. It truly is just window mesh in white. I'm going to go ahead and take it over the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew 2 rows of stitches. I'm actually going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge and then 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge. You don't have to, I just want to do it that way. While I'm sewing, I'm going to try to make for sure that I have even amounts of that ribbon showing on both sides so that it looks like a neat, even finish. I have the mesh pocket completed. I'm going to set it aside and work on another pocket. The next pocket piece I'm going to pull out is the interior slip pocket 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 pieces and I'm going to separate them if I can. And I'm going to have them right sides together. Once you place them right sides together, matching up all the edges, go ahead and sew along the top and the bottom, leaving your sides open. Make sure you backstitch with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Looking at the pattern, what she has you do is sew these top and bottom sides first. So if you were someone who did the contrast on the back, you could go ahead now at this point and create that contrast effect. Like I said before, I never do that. I always just either sew, if you watch my videos, I use the lining the same as the exterior, or occasionally like this one, I felt like I was being pretty fancy in this one using 2 different fabrics, but I rarely use 3. But anyway, what you would do is you would go ahead and fold that down and your bottom will automatically go down, and then you'll sew again to kind of lock that in place. Now I'm not going to do that. The pattern goes through the steps of that and it has pictures, so you're fine. But she does have us go ahead and sew down one side and then sew a little bit down each of these sides to leave an opening to turn this on. I should have read the pattern step ahead and I would have known that I wouldn't have had to stop here. I could have went ahead and sewed these other steps, but I didn't know, and so when I saw that, I did want to go ahead and stop here instead of continuing sewing to tell you if you do the contrast, go ahead and complete that step before you do this one. But now what I'm going to do is go ahead and sew the sides, leaving just a small opening for me to turn this pocket through. I didn't need to leave a big opening, but I definitely wanted to get away from those corners. It's hard for me, I don't know if it is for everybody else, but it is very hard for me to have a good opening that is closed whenever it's on the corner. It just doesn't look well, and I struggle with getting it perfectly even, so I tend to avoid that, and the pattern does tell you to do that too. I am just trimming off these edges here at a diagonal angle, just so it kind of helps reduce the bulk a little bit. Let's go ahead and turn our pocket right side out, and if you need to iron it, which I think I will, go ahead and take it over the ironing board, and then we'll come back and top stitch across the top of it, and that will have this slip pocket finished and ready to be attached, and we'll move on to our next step. I am just turning this interior one pocket right sides out. I'm going to take this over to the ironing board, and I'm also going to, after I iron this off camera, I'm going to also do the same thing for the slip pocket 2. The slip pocket 2 is made in the same exact way as the slip pocket 1, including that contrast if you want to do it. So go ahead and complete your slip pocket 2. We will come back and have both of these ironed and pressed, and then we'll top stitch both of them. I have both of my slip pockets sewn and ironed flat. I'm going to sew along the top edge just for top stitching. I'll still have these side openings left open, but they will be closed whenever we attach these to the lining pieces. So let's just sew across those top edges 1/8 of an inch away. Yours may look differently if you have the contrast at the top of yours. So now that we have our 2 slip pockets and our mesh pocket complete, we only have 1 pocket pretty much to get situated. That is going to be that pleated pocket. We are going to start it the exact same way we did the slip pockets. Put the 2 pieces right sides together and sew along the 4 edges, but leaving an opening in your side. If you're someone who likes to leave your openings in the bottom, that's going to be okay too, but I'm just going to follow the pattern exactly and leave the opening here on the side. So I'm going to go ahead and complete all the steps. I'll sew around the 4 sides, leaving the opening here on the side. Then I will take it over the iron it flat, top stitch, and when I come back, we'll have this one ready to go for the measurements to make that pleated pocket. I have my pleated pocket completed up to this point, and now we're ready to do the next steps. I use the measurements given in the pattern, and my first line is just going to be drawn down the center. I did use chalk for mine, and then she gives us 2 measurements from that center line to draw a line down each side. So you have 3 lines in total. The first thing we'll do is we will take that first line, fold the pocket wrong sides together so that line is directly on top. Take that over to the sewing machine and just top stitch down that pocket with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Open it back up, go to that last line, not the center one, but the last one, fold that wrong sides together with that line being right on the top, and take it and go ahead and top stitch down that side the same way. This is what you have now. Now you're going to fold these 2 pleats, or these 2 lines that you just top stitch on, directly on to that middle line. I'm going to use a few clips to go ahead and have those connected and clipped down in place. Now that you have this clipped down, if you want, you could take it over to the ironing board if you want, but you're going to pull out your larger slip pocket. That is your slip pocket number 1, and you're going to use the pattern measurements as to where to place the pleated pocket directly on top of that slip pocket. So I'm going to get my measurements and do that off camera, and then we'll come back once I have mine orientated correctly. The pattern tells you how far up from the bottom to place this pleated pocket, and then you're just going to center it on the sides. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach the pleated pocket to that slip pocket number 1 by sewing down the 2 sides and across the bottom. Of course, we'll leave that top open so that we can use the pocket successfully. So let's go ahead, making sure we back stitch when we start and stop, because this pocket will get a lot of stress on it where we'll be putting things in and out. So this is how our slip pocket looks currently. We are going to pull out one of our lining pieces, and do not judge me because I still have not rounded those curves yet at the top. I'm sorry, I'll do it before we're done. I will do it, I promise. Okay, now I'm going to use the pattern measurements to place this slip pocket. So I'm going to go off camera and get it centered and measured up from the bottom. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and again sew the 2 sides of the bigger slip pocket down and across the bottom. So we'll do a U-shaped stitch to attach these pockets to the lining piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this clip. I'm going to separate these 2 pleats that I have, and I'm just going to sew from the top of this pocket all the way down the bottom to separate these, so they're 2 completely separate pockets, so it can be a little bit better for organizing and your small things won't get lost in there. Of course, this is an optional step, but it's definitely one I want to do. I don't want to lose things, and I want to have the separate compartments for organization for me. So I'll start at the top, back stitch well, and then just go all the way down. You can still see my chalk line in the middle, so it'll be easy for me to be able to stitch down the center. Now that I have that completed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim all these threads. I have a bunch of threads, and I'm going to take this over the iron and go ahead and press those pleats flat, and that will complete this side of the lining. We have a couple of pockets left to attach to this lining piece. So the first thing we're going to do is we will end up placing this smaller slip pocket number 2 on our lining. The pattern measurements are going to tell us how we place it, but basically you're going to center and then go up so far from the bottom. Once we get that placed by those measurements, then we're just going to go ahead and sew those 3 sides just like we did in the other ones. So let's go ahead and do those steps now. I'm going to measure off camera and then I will sew it on camera. Now that I have that slip pocket attached, I'm going to go ahead and pull out that mesh pocket. What I'll do now is the same thing. Sew down the side, across the bottom, and up the top to attach the mesh pocket to that lining piece. Now that I have both of these pockets attached, what I want to do is I want to divide these right in half down the center. So I have a mark here at the bottom where the center is, and I'll go ahead and put one at the top too. I want to make sure to back stitch really nicely there at the top, since we're going to have a lot of pulling and tugging on those pieces. And then I will back stitch right here when I get to that ribbon to make sure the mesh has some extra security there as well. We have all the pockets, all the interiors and exteriors, the gusset, everything's ready to be attached together. Now you have to make a choice. You can either bind this bag or birth it. The pattern gives you both methods. I am a huge fan of binding, so I'm definitely binding this bag. For me, the next step will be to put the exteriors and linings together. If you are going to birth the bag, go ahead and follow those steps. I'm not for sure if the other lady that is making a tutorial which way she's doing. Hopefully she'll do a birth version so you can have one of each. So we'll see on that. What I will do is I will pull out one of my exterior pieces and one of my lining pieces. For me, it doesn't really matter which way, like which exterior and lining go together. If you have a preference, definitely do that. I will just place those wrong sides together, add a few clips, and then I'll sew completely around the perimeter of the front pieces and the back pieces. So then you will end up with 2 pieces together. After you do that, you will have 2 completed pieces with an exterior and lining. Here is the back exterior and lining pieces attached. I'll trim up any loose threads and any overhang on that. I'm also going to do that same thing now with my front pieces, and then we will come back to talk about the next steps. We are down now to only 3 pieces left besides the strap. If you're making one, I'm going to use webbing for my strap, so it's not going to be a big deal. If you haven't already made the marks for the measurements given in the pattern to how to place the gusset to the exteriors, go ahead and do that now. If you have, all you'll do is simply take your front and you're going to match up those marks and place the gusset and the exterior piece right sides together. You're going to clip all along that edge. I'm not going to clip on camera because I am a very slow clipper and I don't want to take up that time, but after I get it clipped, I will come back on camera, show you how it looks, and then we'll sew it together. I have my gusset clipped right sides together with the front exterior. I want to talk about a couple things. The pattern gives us a couple of tips of how to sew this. She suggests to sew this in sections. I typically would not be doing that. I'd just be like, okay, I'm just going to sew it all around. But here's the thing I found out from another pattern test I did a while back. When you have straight corners with a gusset, it is sometimes tricky to get those beautiful straight 90-degree angle corners. I have found from different designers the technique that does work best is what she's suggesting, sewing it in a section. So what I mean by that is I'm going to flatten this out and I'm going to sew with the seam allowance given the pattern from one corner to the other. I will leave that seam allowance there, so I won't go all the way to one corner. I will go just a little bit away. So whatever the seam allowance is, that's where I'll stop before there. So then whenever I start sewing here, I'll fold this down and make my stitches. I'll make sure that this gusset's not in that seam, and we'll start stitching there so those stitches match up to that 90-degree corner. It's a little tricky, but I have found that gives the best results. Some people may think sewing around a curve is trickier, but I find personally the 90-degree points to get those really nice looking, it's a little bit trickier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push, and I'm going to be sewing with this with the main panels against the bed of my machine, not the gusset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this down, come over to my machine, and I'm not going to start sewing exactly in that corner. I'm going to have that little bit of the seam allowance given on that space there in that corner. Typically, whenever I'm sewing on a gusset, I'm only going to do an 1/8 of an inch basting stitch, but with this one, I'm going to do that full seam allowance first thing, because like I said, I'm trying to make for sure I do not miss those 90-degree corners there. To explain what I'm doing a little bit better, I'm going to change up my camera angle. So you can see I'm getting close to this corner. I'm going to actually move that clip there. I want to use my finger to make for sure I spread that gusset out so I do not get any when I'm doing these last stitches. I'm going all the way to the corner minus that seam allowance, just that little bit. So I'm not going exactly to the corner. You can see I'm stopping. I'm going to do a couple stitches back. That secures that spot there. I will turn it around then and spread it out the other way, and then I'll start sewing again that same distance away from that side, so I can show you that. You can see how that corner just looks a little bit sharper there. It's almost like it's pinched, and I have just a teeny tiny break there. Whenever I'm binding around, that will cover that so there won't be any gaps once we bind it, but I just want to try. And if we push it out, you can see how beautifully that corner looks at that 90 degrees. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue sewing around the rest of this gusset the normal way until I get back to this corner and I will pinch it again. I will continue all this process off camera. I have the bottom completely sewn on and I'm just getting ready to attach the binding, and I just want to make a point, and so I just wanted to come back and talk about one thing. When I sew this binding on, I will sew down here and I won't break the stitches. I will just come to this corner and then pivot and go down. Whenever I did the gusset, I wanted to make for sure I had a really good 90-degree angle, but now that I have that established, it'll be easier to do it here. I just wanted to make that point, kind of clarify that I won't sew it in separate steps when I'm adding the binding on here. So you'll be able to just sew, then do a complete pivot and go down around the rest of it and do the same on the other side. I have my bag completely bound. Everything is ready to go, front, back. We're ready to turn it inside out to see how this bag will look. I have to say that gusset fit perfectly. No problems at all with it fitting. And also the instructions were really well written. So even though there's a lot of pockets, none of them were tricky to do. There was no confusing steps or anything that was kind of like difficult or finagling. And of course I did this all on my domestic machine. Well, I see I did one thing wrong. I'm not going to change it, but I accidentally attached the gusset to the front. This handle should be in the back. That's okay. It's not what I would have wanted, but I could easily say this is the front for my bag so it looks a little bit more normal. But just so you know, make sure you attach your gusset the right way. I wasn't paying attention, so I definitely should have been more cautious with that. It's okay though. I'm all right with that small mistake. I'm human. I make mistakes all the time. It won't affect me to being able to use this bag. So for me, this will probably end up being my front since my handle's back there. It's not too bad for this to be the front and have the handle here. It just looks a little odd. But look at the shape of this. Before any shaping, it's perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take clips, and I use the really thick wide clips. Let me show you those. What I'll do is I'll use these clips, and I'm going to open this up. And do you see how this bottom seam is kind of rolling a little? What I want to do is I want to push that out, and I will clip along there. This will help compress the binding and also kind of teach the gusset and the bag the way I want it to lay so that it'll look really nice. You don't have to leave the clips on long. I'm going to go ahead and finish clipping everything around here, but before I finish the video, let me just sit it up and show you the inside, how wide it opens and how great it looks. Wonderful bag. Everything fit beautifully. Super, super love this pattern. This bag is from Moments by Liz, and I'm using fabrics from both J&R Edwards and from the Emporium. I'm going to have links to where you can get everything in my description. Wonderful pattern, and if you haven't bought this pattern or sewn it, I highly suggest it. It's such a fun, easy pattern, and I can think of so many uses for it. I think not only would it be great for like a laptop or anything, but I also think it would be great for traveling. It's just really a convenient way to store things in, and it has so much compartments for organizing. I love the slip pockets and the zipper pockets, and honestly, even with all these steps, it didn't take me as long as I thought it would. I started out thinking, okay, this will be an all-day sew, and really it didn't. It comes together really quick, and I know my second one will come together even quicker, and in that one, I definitely won't mess up the gusset. I'll be very careful to pay attention that next time. I'm going to leave my bag sitting with these clips on it for about an hour or two, and then I'm going to start taking pictures of it. And I hope that you are able today to sew something new, a new pattern, a new designer, something bright, colorful, and something that just makes you smile and just makes you happy. Thank you guys again for watching another tutorial of mine, and I hope you have a wonderful day.